everyone. Welcome back to the Smut Diaries Podcast. I'm Diana, coming to you from the US.
And I am Marie, and I'm coming to you from Australia.
We have a special guest today, Kimberly Hunt. Let me have her pop in. Hey, Kimberly.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Welcome.
Thanks for joining us today. We had quite the event getting you on here, getting all of us on here in one place. I take blame for that. It's okay.
You have excuses. It's fine.
Yeah.
So, Kimberly, tell us or tell everyone about yourself a little bit.
Oh, sure. So I am a freelance editor. I have had some experience in the past working with some small publishers, but for the most part, I'd say my clients are indie authors. I've had some exciting clients that traditionally published and still, maybe work with me for early in that story development and help working through some, when you get stuck. But I have been fortunate to get to a point in my editing career where now I can really focus on the projects that I'm passionate about. So I, years ago, started to narrow my acceptances of books to mostly romance. So I do have we'll get to that, I'm sure, but I do edit other genres, especially for like my local critique groups that love to work with me one-on-one in person. And perhaps they don't write romance, so I will take them on here and there. But to keep it simple, my passion is for romance. I have been doing this for a number of years, and I'm just very fortunate to do what I love.
That's awesome. It's awesome that you're able to narrow down to do what you want versus just whatever, is offered up to you.
Yeah.
That definitely makes going to work more exciting.
Definitely. There's something about being able to wake up in the morning, roll out of bed, with excitement, knowing what's on your plate instead of dread.
Definitely.
And we obviously always have to accept all the things that aren't smutty occasionally.
That's right. If they're going to fade to black or close the door, I will just have to accept it.
It's a tolerance.
Meet behind the scenes.
That's right.
Let's get to your smutty origin story. When did you start reading smutty romance?
At a totally inappropriate age. I think I follow comedian Mitch Hedberg's motto or theory that every book is a children's book if a kid can read. And so I'm the oldest of four, and my mother had I have three younger siblings, so she had three others to fuss over. And I believe my first romance was nabbed off of her bookshelf at maybe the age of 10. So definitely had that shock value when I first read it, but I was hooked. And
do you remember what it was?
No, I couldn't tell you even author. Like she, like me, it is quite the romance reader, like just voracious consumer. And I'll ask her all the time. I'll say, tell me, so for my blog, who should I read? Who should I write about? And she's like, oh, I couldn't even tell you an author or a title. I've gotten better in, since I've been editing and in my later years, with my collection, I have tried to, make a special point of, hey, this author really stuck with me, and I'll get their next one and make sure I go to where I see them in a signing. But back then, I couldn't tell you.
It's very much in that stage where I will remember like what I've read, but I can't tell you like the title of it or the author. And I feel so bad because Marie will be like naming off these books, and I'm like, Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. That I'm over here on my phone, like looking through Google or Goodreads or something.
Well, someone will tell me, they'll ask me, oh, have you read so-and-so? And they'll say the title or the author. And I'm like, oh, I don't think so. It doesn't sound familiar. Tell me about it. And so as soon as they name a character or give me like the careers of the characters or the plot point, I'm like, oh, yeah, I read that. And like, that's what sticks with me.
Yeah, the characters tend to.
Yeah.
So when did you decide to become an editor of romance or study romance?
So That is interesting. So how I even got started editing before I even turned to editing strictly romance, a family friend knew that I read a lot, and he wrote a book and he asked me to read it. And as soon as I got through maybe chapter 1 or 2, I was like, this is a fantastic story, but your spelling mistakes are atrocious and it shouldn't be in print. Like, I was already reading a proof copy. I'm like, this is a very big mistake you're making here. And so he inspired me to, seek out the courses and get, I had mentors and a small publishing company that was, nice enough to kind of train me up. And so he kind of set me off in the right direction, where he asked me to read his book, and I got back to him with lots of helpful feedback that was just, completely unprofessional. And from there, it just snowballed. He asked, can I give your name to my critique group? They want the same kind of help. And I'm like, all right, now you're a family friend, but if strangers are going to be coming to me for this, I'm going to have to start charging. And so, especially once I started to invest in like the subscriptions for the Chicago Manual Style and, and all my craft books and the courses. And as soon as I put an investment into this is a career change, then spinning up a website, all the things that come with treating this as
all the things that are draining your pocketbook.
Yeah. So it started with his book, which was like dystopian, and it was incredible, but it wasn't steamy enough for me. And so from there, I was like, well, if I'm going to spend all these hours reading and editing, it should be in what I love to read. And so that's when I started to be more selective in the projects that I accepted.
Yeah, I would have a hard time editing or even reading something that doesn't have romance in it. Because even now, people will start telling me about a book. I'm like, is there romance?
Is there a happily ever after
story on the side? I'm like, no. Like, do they have sex? Well, no, I don't want to hear about it anymore. I'm sorry.
Same. Absolutely same.
Yeah, I am a huge fan of those posts that people say 1-star review because there was too much sex. I'm like, what was that book again?
I had one of those.
Yes, those are the ones you one-click right off the bat.
Yeah.
I literally posted my 1- and 2-star reviews on Facebook because of that reason.
Yeah, you can't go around yucking someone else's yum. It's just, you can. I'll accept it.
Exactly.
Okay, so what is your favorite part of editing? Or actually, first, let's go, what type of editing do you do?
Sure. So that kind of answers both questions. I started out with copy editing, and then through my coursework discovered how much I really love the earlier part, the developing the story. So I do primarily developmental editing and line editing right now. I have revision division is super small. For years, it was just me. And this past year, I have started to bring in a few other editing colleagues to help. And so I focus on the developmental editing and line editing. And then especially if I have done 2 rounds like that kind of work on the same manuscript, it's much better to get fresh eyes and have someone else, one of my colleagues, do the copy editing or the proofreading. So I would say we kind of, between the group of us, we could cover the spectrum of the editing, but I'd say I specialize in the developmental piece of it. That's my favorite part. And do you want me to elaborate on what those are? Because maybe not everybody knows.
I was going to ask you that because I know like a lot of new authors and stuff will be like, oh, editing, it's editing, whatever. But there's so many different parts.
To a new author, they're just like, I need an editor, but they don't know that there are different parts of it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And especially as someone, a new author, you want to do what's right for your book at that time. So maybe with the budget that you have and the release plan that you have, maybe right now a proofreader is where it's at and this is what we need to do. But then if you're planning a series and I really need book 1 to suck in my readers and make them want the rest, it may be worth investing in a developmental editor to make sure that your pace is spot on, that your point of view is consistent, and it's the right point of view for who is the best character to be conveying the story at that point. So developmental editing looks at like the character development. And from that, I mean like that they have an arc, that there's growth from, you know, where the story starts to the end. And looks also at plot to make sure there's no holes, or that you're, you know, looking at structure too, that the story has the I guess from romance, like the, you know, the expected genre conventions and the beats that people would expect in a romance novel. So the developmental editing piece is very early in the process. It's looking at the story and how to improve the story elements. And then the line editing is taking that draft, that early draft, and, you know, look, it's more of an art, because when I'm copy editing, I've got rules that I follow. Like I'm looking at, you know, what does the style manual suggest for punctuation and usage and grammar and spelling. But the line editing is a little more subjective, because it's just about flow and the improving transitions and getting rid of repetition, and just like stepping it up a notch that makes it like either a deeper point of view or more in line with how that character thinks and feels. So the word choice is more fitting for them. So line editing can get a little, I like to be a little balanced with my feedback there, where I'm preserving the author's voice and not, you know, stepping over the, you know, stepping in too much, but also offering suggestions for, you know, how to get rid of some of the to be words and, you know, any passive, I'm trying to think what else line editing covers. It's so much more about like voice and flow.
I don't think I realized that it went that in depth for line editing. Mm-hmm. So thank you for explaining that to me. I mean, I still see myself as a newbie author, so there's still a lot I don't know.
So when you do your process, do you actually go through and do it all? Like, do you wear all the different hats all at the one time, or do you go through and do developmental editing and then come back and do line editing and then come back and do the copy editing, or do you just do it all at once sometimes? I
do not do it all at once, and I do not recommend that. I think it's too much. You'll miss a lot for sure. I think I am typically paid to do one of those, or if someone says I need you to do both, it's usually as like two separate projects, because it'll take me depending on, you know, how the word count, it'll take me for like a 80,000 word novel 2 to 3 weeks to do a developmental edit, and then the author needs 2 weeks, 2 months, like to absorb that feedback and then go forward and implement what they agree with. So it's hard. I would not advise saying, let's do this all in one round, because it needs to be a little back and forth. You're going to get a different, almost, it's not going to be completely different, but the manuscript will look way better the second time I see it.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned that they go back and fix what they agree with. Mm-hmm. That you make suggestions as an editor, you make suggestions, not just, you know, oh, this sucks, you need to change this. And I know that's what a lot of people are worried about, is like they get, you know, the manuscript back and they see all the red in it, and it's like, you have the ultimate upper hand, I guess, in your story. Like, you get to finish it how you want. They're making suggestions. You don't absolutely have to follow it, but they are usually trained. So, you know.
Yeah, but and that's the thing, a professional editor is trained to be diplomatic. So I am giving feedback that is both positive and critical. So I will say what is working well, because that's useful to you also. So, you know, hey, if I'm saying you've ended this chapter, you know, very strong transition, compelling you to read to the next, this is really great for pace. So in a developmental edit, I'm explaining all of that. Then if you're seeing this worked well here, then you'll know to implement that in other areas too. And so that's just one example, but I think it's important that a editor has that diplomacy like, it's not just about, you know, telling people what they want to hear. You need to give, you know, suggestions when you're identifying problems also. So if you found you know, like one of the biggest issues that I think is challenging for authors to, kind of noodle through and figure out how to address is if I have feedback that says, here in this scene, what this character is doing or saying is making them unlikable. Like this is hurting your character likability. So then I have to give some suggestions for either how to soften what's happening or other ways to redeem the character in the arc. And so those are the kinds of things that it may not be great to hear when you first get the manuscript back, but if the editor is doing their job, they're giving you options for how to implement the suggestions.
Which is great because it's hard enough handing over something you put so much time and effort in than being like, oh, this doesn't work. And you're like, but why? Why not? What's wrong with it?
Yes. And that's why the developmental edit is so helpful, because you're getting comments in the manuscript showing you where things are good and where things could be better. And then the revision letter is a huge explanation of what has been identified in the manuscript. So the two together work really well. Like I always tell my authors, my clients, that it's an investment. Like if you just do one developmental edit, that is applicable to your whole writing career. You learn so much from that.
When you mentioned just doing one developmental edit, do you mean just for one book or just
Right.
one? Oh, okay.
One time, just try it once, see what you get that is helpful to that manuscript. But I guarantee that you're going to implement those things you've learned in future books.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense and something I'll probably have to implement at some point.
You mentioned in some of the previous things you said about the training that you had to go through. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you had to actually do in regards to training and certification?
Sure. So unfortunately, editing is not necessarily a standardized or when people claim to have a certificate in copy editing, there are professional organizations, which I do belong to a couple, but there's not necessarily I'm also a project manager and I have a certification for that. And I have to take courses every year to maintain that. There's not that same type of certification process for editors, but I kind of have my own. I did go through and take the developmental courses, the line editing courses, copy editing courses through ACES and EFA, and I continue to do that every year so that I keep my skills fresh. So there's no organization mandating it, and there's no one testing me to make sure that I actually absorb the information and can use it. But I kind of put that rigor around my own work.
What classes or books or anything would you recommend for someone who's looking into starting to start editing and having that become a career choice?
Oh, that's a great question. So I have an enormous list that I have collected through the years, reading craft books. So I have, of course, Gwen Hayes's Romancing the Beat was the first place I started. She's that's the Bible. But there's also for especially writing steamy scenes, I think I'll massacre her last name. It's Diana something. And there's some great ones by Janice Hardy for understanding show versus tell or don't tell. But from an editing standpoint, that is not necessarily exactly geared toward writers. I would say Renni, self-editing for fiction writers. This was one of the courses, the books that was recommended. So I think is it Browne and King, Renni, Browne, and Dave King. So this one was great. It from an editing standpoint, that was a course book that was required reading that we had to purchase and discuss in the weeks. There are a whole bunch on my shelf. I'm sorry to give you the back of my head while I look at it all. But
You're fine.
yeah, I could, if you, I don't know, as part of the podcast notes, if you want a list of craft books, I could do that. But I think from blogs and things to follow that are helpful are the Helping Writers Become Authors. That's a huge help reference that, even though I don't write. And then there's an editing one that I use all the time. Beth Hill's editor's blog is fantastic. She has one post that is about like how to spell interjections. Like, so we have some consistency over is AAH or AHH, those kinds of things.
Okay, yeah.
Or how many M's should be used when you're like, So I really love that blog post that she put out. She also has some really informative ones about consistency with numbers and dialogue and punctuating around dialogue. Very helpful things that are also you can find in the Chicago Manual of Style, which is like my Bible as an editor. Those are good resources too. Sorry, you probably regret asking me. I could go on.
No, that's okay. Like I think definitely what we can do is we can always add a few of the necessary, what you feel are necessary links onto our podcast, and I can include them in the blog as well. So that's definitely something we can do and share all that wealth of knowledge that you have.
Great.
Yeah, so we'll definitely, because I'm always looking for new craft books to add to my collection and stuff, and collect us until I bring them out again and then put them back for a while.
And I don't read them word for word from start to finish. Like I'm constantly pulling out, looking at the either the index or the table of contents to address a specific need. So that's probably why I have such an obsession with collecting them. Like I have too many because they're good for different things.
Well, and then you never know. You can get 5 different books on, like, let's go with your interjections, like you were mentioning. Mm-hmm. And each one's going to say something different or click with you in a different way.
That's right.
So it's good to have different options.
For sure.
You mentioned you do all sorts of editing from developmental all the way down to proofreading. Mm-hmm. Do you prefer working with authors from developmental to the end, or are you okay just popping in for like a line edit and then they just use you for that? Or
so I definitely break up my day to use different parts of my brain. So I can't just say I will only do one specific part of it. I'm happy to pop in and help where needed because it gives me that brain break. So if I'm working on a developmental edit, say all morning, and I'm really struggling to help improve, like sometimes unraveling point of view issues is and then I'll spend the afternoon on copy editing. And by the end of the afternoon, I'm like, the commas are killing me. So it's good. It's really good to break it up and kind of have both at my disposal to be able to say I have normally a good week. When I'm looking at my schedule for the week, I have a developmental edit and a copy edit, or a line edit and a proofread. Like using 2 different parts of my brain for shorter periods works for me.
From a writer's standpoint, I can totally agree with that, because sometimes going from, writing one novel or like going through and editing your other one, or even just different scenes. Like I know Marie, like she's like, oh, a smut scene, boom, I've got like 2,000 words in 10 minutes. And me, I'm like, oh crap, okay.
I hate the fluffy stuff.
Bust out the Barbies, put them in position, and figure out how everything's working.
So I remember from watching one of your previous episodes, you mentioned that you come back to that later, Diana, and that Marie, that you that's like your bread and butter.
Bread and butter.
Yeah. But I think when I was just at must have been Lust in the Low Country, where they had a panel of writers and they were talking exactly about this, like, how do you write these awesome sex scenes? And one of the authors, just like you, there were 4 of them. So there was a mix, there was some diversity of how they tackle this. And like you, Diana, one of the authors said, I have to get to know my characters. So I will insert sex scene here. And by the end of the book, I know them much better. And I know this sex scene needs to just be like physical. And then this one needs to show that they have some vulnerability. And then this one has to show the love, so whatever works for you, don't change your process. But I just wanted to kind of validate that you're not alone.
Good. That was good to hear, though.
We do.
So Marie, I'm like, oh, dang you, like you did that awesome, and I'm over here struggling.
I think it's one of the reasons why we are eventually going to co-write, because like I'll do the smutty stuff and she'll do the other stuff. The
Fantastic.
stuff that I struggle with.
Yeah, definitely makes us a good mesh.
So I need to know, what are the most common mistakes that you see while you're doing your editing?
Oh, that is a good one. So I think
I'm probably guilty of them myself.
yeah, I need to preface it with no judgment. Like you can call it a mistake, but I'm not like holding this against anyone. And I feel terrible when I read something and know I ache for the author when I know that it has been through so many rounds of the author reading it and the families and friends and the beta readers and the ARC readers and the editors, and still stuff manages to get through. So we can talk about mistakes, but please know that I'm not judging. From a developmental standpoint, I would say it's show versus tell. Like it's not necessarily a mistake, but it's from a developmental standpoint, it's hurting your pace. It's hurting the engagement. Like that is a problem. And then seem to be like.
Can you elaborate on the like? Just for the listeners,
yeah,
like the difference between the show versus tell. Like I know I've read it and stuff,
yeah.
but just for them.
So are you familiar with like filter words? Like if you say she saw the baby cry, or she heard the baby cry. Sorry, I'm just not good thinking on my feet for like a quick example there. If you take it out and you just say the baby cried, like that is more showing of something happening rather than filtering the scene and putting this narrator in between the reader and the story and saying she heard the baby cry. Like it's almost like this is a good example of both show versus tell and perspective, like deep point of view. So like from show versus tell, it's when you're saying how someone feels rather than showing it. So you can say she was annoyed that the baby was crying, or you can describe it where the mom throws her hands up in the air and is like, what now? Like, like show the angst rather than saying that the character is feeling angst. That's my like attempt at explaining it.
Perfect. And I know I'm super guilty of that for sure. As you're like explaining, I'm like, yeah, no.
Yeah, and it's great for first draft, get it down, what's happening, but it's that line editing that's going to come back and be like, let's tell it here, or developmental editing. I'll point it out there too and say, okay, this is an emotional scene. I need more here. I want to be, the reader wants to either, there are like two types. There are readers that feel like they're watching a movie, and there are readers that feel like they are the characters. And so you've got to write and show enough that they get that connection.
Yeah, that's like a very good point, because you don't want to just be reading, I see Spot run, like you really want to get invested in it.
Right.
Is there an author that you will always give an absolute yes to editing, like looking forward to it? Without even hearing about the book, they're just like, hey, Kimberly, and you're like, yes. Which is
too many. There are too many. Yes, I'm maybe I'm a pushover. Yeah, there are so many great authors that I would say yes to. And honestly, I try to that's why I started to expand a little bit this past year, was that I don't like saying no, and I don't like saying I'm booked till March, which is the case right now. Like I don't want to turn away people that I know I've worked with before, that, we had a great relationship and they've come to rely on me. Like I need to be here for the, people that count on me. And so I can't have a huge wait. And, so no, I'm sorry, I'm not answering your question with a list of names, because
you are totally fine.
Is so long.
Your answer.
Yeah. I'm a yes woman. I don't like saying no.
So do you ever get bored?
Yes. Shame on me. But I do. But you know what? That's where that's where I'm taking notes. And I'm like, okay, it's lost my interest. And it's why. Like, is it a pace problem? Is it the character lacks goals or the plot lacks conflict? Like that right there is my trigger to be like, wait, why did my mind wander? Why, what needs to change in this scene to keep me, engaged and wanting to keep going rather than being like, is it time for another coffee? I do want to come back, if I may, to jump to, you asked about mistakes and I only answered like half the question. I talked about developmental editing, and the other half of mistakes that I see are from like the copy editing side of things are with homophones. So, like when something is spelled differently, but they sound the same, they show up in writing all the time. Like I'll see vice, V-I-V-I-S-E, they mean different things. Same thing with like wave. I see like, someone's trying to say they waved goodbye and they're spelling it like you're filling out a waiver. And these are the things that like, okay, they slip through. I mean, any kind of like, anything, if you listen to your manuscript, which is this is like best practice, you should listen to your manuscript because you'll catch a lot, but you won't catch the homophones. So
yeah, because and same with reading too. It's like, because you're hearing it in your head and you're like, yeah, that's correct. But and so it's good to have an extra pair of eyes.
Yeah.
I'm the worst with effect versus effect, honestly.
Yes. Yeah, that happens.
I always have to think that one through, like, okay, this one does this one does, and then
I did read some analogy somewhere with the A before E thing, but can't remember off the top of my head.
For me, it's always about like, is it being used as a verb or not? That helps me.
Yeah.
But I'm the geek.
Hey, we need geeks. Geeks are awesome. What is your go-to comfort read?
Again, I have to disappoint you because I do not reread. I do not. Okay. My comfort is the surprise, is the not knowing what's coming. And so I have lots of books that I adore, and obviously I've collected, and I said, yeah, maybe someday I'll reread that, but I'm totally lying. It's not happening. There's too many good books that are out there. Like I'm clicking on the I have like a Kindle app on my iPad. And so it's hundreds. I've downloaded hundreds of ebooks. I have so many. Every signing I go to, I say, okay, here's the budget. This is how many I'm buying. And I lie. I walk away. So I don't have time to reread. I don't have a comfort one. My comfort is this is something new and exciting.
I totally see that. I have to wait long enough. Not that I forget about the book, because if it's something I want to reread, I don't really forget it, but just long enough to where it's a little more, I don't remember like each line word by word,
Yeah.
Where it feels a bit more fresh.
Yes.
So of the books that you have read so far, who has been your favorite couple or
this is
group?
A good one. I love that you followed that up with couple or group, because I would say for the years and years that I've been a reader, and then even while editing, a lot of my romance editing was male-female in the beginning of my career. And then I have a couple of authors that I helped with male. And I kept pushing and saying, I need to see more female. I don't see enough of this. And so I have read a few, but I have not yet edited. But I didn't edit this one. I can't take any credit, but my favorite group of the moment is Emily Rath's Pucking Around. I am Team Price so hard on Rachel and Caleb and Jake and Mars. And I just think that's a phenomenal story. I got to meet her in October at Less Than Low Country, and got signed books for myself and my book club. Like I walked away with a haul. I was so excited. And I've talked a lot about this book because it is a great story. It's and I think for maybe some of your fans that will resonate, like that Why Choose is, something I didn't have a lot of exposure to early in my reading and editing years, but I am all about it now.
We've got I'm not sure if you know that we've got the Smut Diaries awards that we're getting nominations for at the moment, and that has actually been voted one of the best groups or nominated for one of the best groups for the year. So I'm definitely excited to see how many other people vote for that.
Yeah, because it was definitely huge on Book Talk and everything too. It was
massive.
It was a good book, and the novella beforehand as well.
Oh yes, yeah. Do not sleep on that, because that's actually, I read it in order, that one night and then Pucking Around, and yeah, for sure.
So, what was the last TV show that you binged?
So I'll answer it, but then I want to explain.
I'm concerned now.
The last show that I binged was Suits, which is old. It's not, but it fits very well with the fact that I don't watch any TV. So when my husband travels for work, he will come home and turn on the TV and be like, "It's still on ESPN." I'm like, "Yeah, no, I don't even turn it on." He called me today and he said, "Okay, the game is on. Can you find it? Which channel? I think it's on DirecTV on the app." Like going through a complicated explanation. I was like, "No, I can't do this. Like I cannot, it's not, I'm sorry." So I sent one of the children down to do it, because I do not operate the TV. I don't watch any TV unless he's making me watch it with him, and we watch Suits together.
It is a good series.
Yeah. We haven't made it through all of it, and I'm not sure we will, but it was a great start.
Yeah, I've seen bits and pieces with my husband, because that's usually when I'll watch TV is whatever he's watching. It's very rare that I'll watch something that I'm like, I have to watch this. Let's go with like the ultimate question. Mac or Windows?
Ooh. Can I do like the mullet of technology and say that I use Windows for business and Mac for fun?
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got both too.
Can you do a little explanation on that? I'm curious.
Yeah, sure. So way back, I'm up in like outside of Baltimore now, but I lived in Atlanta for a number of years, and I was playing around with photography and doing, I worked in a dark room, and I loved all the photo apps and software on my Mac. So I had a Mac in the kitchen, and I got my very first iPod when we lived in Atlanta, and I still have like the Apple Watch and the iPad and like all things. But I am a geek at heart, and I had 20 years in the corporate world of Excel spreadsheets and Microsoft Word and PowerPoints, of course. And so that is, I'm capable on both, but I'm way better from a business standpoint on Windows.
Okay, so we're Windows in the streets, Mac in the sheets.
That's right. That is so true, because that's when I actually am reading on my iPad at night, it's in bed. And when I am working on a manuscript at my desk, it's on the PC.
Nice.
Okay, so just a little bit of a smutty side thing, since you brought up your bed. What's on your nightstand?
Oh, good one. So I am not a clutter type of person. I think better when it's everything in its place. So it's very sparse. I have the iPad, a Yeti full of water, and a lamp that I should get rid of, because in the right light, it makes it look like there's a huge spider in it. So like the shadow, and it seriously, it freaks me out at least like twice a year, and I need a new lamp. But basically, it's very clean. It's just the charger for the phone or the iPad, and the lamp and my water.
I wish I could be that put together. Mine just steadily collects stuff where I'm like, I need to clean this or it's all going to topple.
I currently don't have a nightstand. So.
So that means yours is very organized as well.
Well, I kind of put things on the ground, but finally, what is your favorite thing about Smut, basically?
Oh, it's got to be the community of readers and writers. I feel like you can find common ground anywhere you go talking about romance, and there's no shame, there's no judgment. It's you like what you like, and let me tell you about this recommendation or that one. And, it's just very positive and kind of embraces that happily ever after kind of, plenty of love to go around feeling. I think that's probably what I love about it the most.
I love that. I actually really agree with that. And I've never thought of it that way, but yes, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You guys have been a great interviewers. Love the questions.
Thank you for being our guinea pig and being our first interviewee, aside from each other, which...
Yeah, we rock.
But, I mean, really.
No problem. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I feel like your idea for occasionally including bookish business is fantastic. I love it.
Yeah,
so thank you for letting me be the first.
Anytime. I'm glad you could take our bookish business interviewee virginity.
Everybody loves the virginity analogy. And also, just finally, is there anything else that you wanted to say to our listeners? Was there anything you could offer or anything like that?
Absolutely. Thank you for that chance. I'd love to offer a promo code. So I think regardless of whether you write steamy or contemporary or historical or, all the tropes and the subgenres, what I can help with and fit in regardless, sometimes full length novels, there's waiting lists, but for book descriptions, I know so many authors struggle with this, and it's a quick thing. And me and my magic, she just is magical with blurbs or book descriptions. What we do is we do blurb edits. So you send us what you throw on the page that says, this is what my book is about, but I'm not happy with it, and this is probably not going to sell like this. So tell us what your book is about, and we will give you 2 or 3 options. Like, we'll edit what you have and give you maybe 2 more options. And then you're free to pick and choose what works and put together, or just grab as it is one other. And so I did want to offer like a 50% off blurb edit for both of you and your fans. Do you want me to just say, like, you can go to revisiondivision.com and you can contact me and ask for a blurb edit. And if you use the promo code RDBlurb50, that'll get you half off. And we can put that like in the comments or the...
We'll put it in the blog and on the podcast description.
Great.
How long is this good for?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Would it be fair to say a year?
Oh, that's very generous.
Generous.
I think so too.
Thank you. Like, I know as an author, like, everyone in the author community hates writing blurbs.
Oh my gosh, so much. So much. It's horrible.
So thank you very much again for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.